You had it right.
Co-chairperson, no, you are a chairperson, Swearingen, from the Assembly side, and committee members. It's wonderful to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. A public hearing is a chance for us to speak up and share with you what we care about. And that starts with helping you to know a little bit about me. My name, as I said, is Ann Minster. I live in Assembly District 56, which falls within Appleton, along with a lot of rural area. I've lived in Wisconsin my entire life, and as you can tell, it's been a while. As a child, think back on when we were children. My parents and teachers taught me to play fair. I wonder whose face or voice you hear when you remember who taught you about fair play. Maybe it was your parents, a coach, or someone at your church. As an adult, I taught speech and language in early childhood special education. While learning about fairness, my preschoolers found it easy to recognize the absence of fairness. Oh, it was easy. I'd hear them say, "That's not fair." This brings me to the proposed legislative maps. Quite simply, they're not fair. And they're wrong for Wisconsin and our democracy. Here is a current map of Assembly District 56, represented by Representative Dave Murphy. He was here earlier today. And it's easy to see why I call it the Pac-Man District, as it curves and closes in around 55 and 57. And I don't know, I guess I need to learn more about what the word compact means. Because this does not look compact to me. So, the gerrymandering of my district and our state is even more blatant than within the proposed maps, as you've already heard from others. And we all know that a majority of Wisconsinites want a nonpartisan, a fair and open, transparent, nonpartisan process for drawing our voting district maps. And that is among Republicans, Democrats, and independents. Politicians drew these maps, and they gave their party an unfair advantage. And as we've heard around Illinois, Maryland, the gerrymandering happens by both parties. It's done. But it's always wrong for the voters. It's wrong for democracy. Gerrymandering results in a disregard for the will of the people. Thinking of all my past students and of today's students, our public schools require adequate funding and a substantial increase in the reimbursement rate for special education services. We're down to like 29-30%. And when I began teaching, we were over 60% at that time, back in 1976. And you know, all students lose when we're not adequately providing state support for mandated services. But regardless, our voices have gone unanswered, even though there is strong public support for our schools throughout the state. Gerrymandering eliminates the need for accountability to the voters. In fact, accountability to the voters. This morning before leaving, before sunrise, my husband said, "Well, you know, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter what you say today." And this is what is happening to voters in our state. In 2012, I ran for the county board. And first time I had run for public office. And it was one of my secondary goals to make sure that in my county supervisory district that more people voted than in any of the other 35 supervisory districts. And you know, I accomplished that goal because I knocked on every single door. And really saddens me when I meet people at the door not knowing who they are, what party they support, and they tell me, oh, I don't vote. And they say it with a source of, like they're proud to be a non-voter. And I work hard to get people out to vote every single election. And I don't care whether they're Republicans or Democrats. I want people to vote because that's their voice. Unless we hear the people's voices and they know that they're being heard, they stop voting and they stop running for election. And when you talk about this false argument that Democrats would win elections if they had better candidates, the fact is we've seen that Wisconsin favors Republicans. There are more Republicans in Wisconsin than Democrats, especially in rural areas. And so my question is, why do you need partisan gerrymandering? Why? Why do you don't need it? You could win without it if you had good candidates. Sachin Shetty here, he said that he felt that the party in power, those that gerrymander, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, it doesn't matter which state, but that if you partisan gerrymander, that is a sign of you're being cowardly, was the word, cowardly. And it got me to thinking that there's another word. There's another word here, because if you're not willing to put forth candidates that can win without partisan gerrymandering, then I would suggest that is laziness. Mm-hmm. Because you're relying upon a process that does not require the voters to support you. It's a slam dunk. Dan Thino, state senator, a retired state senator who is a Republican. Dan Thino is in support of fair maps, and I have committed to memory a quote I heard him say. These are his words. Elections should not be decided before voters go to the polls. So please, I want you to think back on whoever taught you about fair play and who taught you about democracy and what that means, and reject these gerrymandered maps and introduce fair maps. Give the people of Wisconsin fair representation and responsive government. Thank you.
Grace, you can go ahead. We can finally see your face now.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. My name is Grace Quinn, and I live in District 3 on Menominee land, also known as Appleton, Wisconsin. And I'm here today representing the younger demographic. And I urge all of you to support Senate Bill 389 and Assembly Bill 395 and reject the recently drawn maps, as they are heavily gerrymandered and are a gross disrespect to our democracy. Gerrymandering allows our policymakers to be comfortable and play to their own interests rather than the interests of their constituents. This partisanship and polarization created by gerrymandering strays us away from being able to have those uncomfortable, controversial, yet so necessary conversations. And one of them being climate change. It is no secret that our Earth is burning, and it would be naive to think that Wisconsinites are immune to the effects. There are children in Milwaukee that are exposed to daily hazardous air pollutants. There are farmers' crops that are drying up and dying, and they are losing their livelihood. The beloved hobby of fishing is in danger as the population of walleye and perch decline. In my own district, District 3, there are people who are receiving dirty and polluted water from broken septic systems. But this isn't being addressed, as my representative lives comfortably in the urbanized pocket that has been packed into my district. As a young person, I'm going to be candid and honest. I'm terrified for my future in the state of our democracy. These maps are going to shape the lives and communities for the next decade. Within this upcoming decade, we are facing the looming threat of climate change. Recent reports show that how we address the climate crisis in the next few years are going to set us on course for what our future will look like in the coming centuries. Our climate doesn't have 10 years to spare. Wisconsin needs to start addressing the crisis at hand. But how do we get there if gerrymandering isn't even allowing for these conversations to be had or to be heard? We are living in a unique era of transformation for our economy, social justice, but most importantly, our environment. All of which your constituents have a stake in. Your constituents have opinions, they have ideas, values, wants, and needs. But the current maps silence our voices and our vote. Because our current maps ensure that politicians will hold their seats election after election, no matter what they say or what they do. The maps represent the interests of the people, not the politicians. Before I came here today, I was talking to Anne about what I was going to write, what I was going to say to you guys. And Anne gave me a really good piece of advice. She said, we're not here to convince you that these maps are wrong. And we're not even here to convince you to do the right thing. We're here to show you what the right thing is to do. And you know that these maps are unfair, they're gerrymandered, they do not represent the people. They represent you and your interests. And if you believe in democracy, you will reject these maps and you will do the right thing. Thank you.
Is this on? There it is. Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Chairman Strobel, who's not here, Chairperson Swearingen, and the rest of the committee. Thanks for allowing us to speak here today, but actually I should correct that. Allowing the citizens to speak to you, that's not right. I think that's what we're all here to talk about. My name is Sally Huntington. I currently live in Appleton, Wisconsin. I've lived in Green Bay, I've lived in La Crosse, I've lived in Black Creek, I've lived in Janesville, and I grew up on a family farm in rural Shawano County. So I'd ask you, what do all these areas have in common? All of them experienced massive changes in their voting districts in 2010. Many of these areas lost seats, lost a voice at the state level because of it. Each of them are a unique community with concerns and priorities that often differ, from rural to urban. That's why it's so important that each of these communities are fairly represented at the state legislative level. I live in the same district as Ann, which we showed you is highly gerrymandered. Why? Probably because the area that I live in is one of the most rapidly growing areas in the northern counties. We have the towns of Grand Chute, North Appleton, Greenville. It's growing tremendously. I heard a figure that that particular district had an increase of over 5,000 citizens. 6,000? Yeah. So it had to be changed. So they changed it, but the new maps they went to are even worse. So they're not thoughtfully designed. They were drawn to keep an unfair majority in the legislature, period. Single party rule is never good. Single party rule is not good for Wisconsin. It's not good for our country. We had a chance to experience this before World War II. How did that work out for Germany? Single party rule. Not too well. We need to have divergent views. We need to have more democracy, not less. We need to have nonpartisan debates. We need to listen to each other. We need to pay attention when people are listening or talking. The best ideas are generated with an open mind and when we listen to the divergent views and not block them. So you guys took a shortcut. Cut and pasted these old gerrymandered maps that were already rated as unconstitutional and simply enlarged a few areas, made things a little worse for us citizens. You refused to even consider the alternative maps that were presented by Fair Maps or those presented by concerned citizens. The citizens of the state support an end to gerrymandering. Why are you afraid of it? Why are you afraid to run in a free and fair election? Why do you have to cheat? I don't get it. Both rural and urban citizens of the state appreciate fair play, honesty, and hard work, like Ann said. Growing up on a family farm, we had 12 children. We played games together. And one of the biggest horrible nights are where somebody was caught cheating. They had to leave the game. They were done. We weren't playing with them anymore. And that's how it worked. So, you know, Wisconsin used to be a beacon of progressive thinking. We had a superior education system. We had great roads and a strong and vibrant economy. That's the state I loved, and I'd really like to have it back. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Any questions for Sally?